Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Fleet webcast, hosted by Lauren, Pamma, and Ashley Barnett. And now, initially, I will just hand over to Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to the second in our series of fleet webinars focused on the key topics impacting fleets today. In today's webinar, we'll be focusing on sustainability and how you can help your organisation move to a more sustainable future by decarbonising your fleet. I'm Lauren Pamma, Head of Electrification for LLOYDS, and I'm joined today by Ashley Barnett, who heads up our fleet consultancy team. We work together to support customers transition on their road to zero. So why are we talking about sustainability today? Well, quite simply, we think it's an important topic for UK businesses, and we're at a critical point in time where we need to take action. Scientists estimate that global temperatures have risen by around 1 degree since 1850. And in August this year, the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth was recorded in Death Valley, and that has to be a wake-up call to us all. This figure could exceed 4 degrees by the end of this century if no action is taken to limit the emissions. And a rise of 4 degrees could have a devastating effect on the environment, leading to floods, global warming, coastal erosion, etc., loss of biodiversity. And because of this, global deals like the Paris Agreement aim to keep global temperatures below 2 degrees higher than pre-industrial levels, and that will reduce the risk of severe and irreversible climate change and help the move to a greener economy. So what's Lloyds Banking Group doing about this? Well, we've set some ambitious targets. We've pledged to reduce the amount of carbon emissions we finance by more than 50% by 2030. We've already reduced that, including financing more than 40 renewable energy projects, the equivalent of generating power for over 5 million homes. We've agreed a partnership with the Woodland Trust to plant 10 million trees over the next 10 years. And we've also signed up to all 3 of the Climate Group's commitments to decarbonise property, energy use and vehicles. For LLOYDS, that means signing up to EV100. And we aim to be net zero emission across our entire leased fleet portfolio by 2030. And that means taking you on the journey with us. If you're interested in finding out more about what it means to join EV100 yourselves, then please contact us after the call. And it's been great to see that several of you have already signed up. We can also support halving our travel emissions by 2030 through a sustainable affinity proposition, engagement with daily rental suppliers, ensuring attractive all-electric company car schemes, and having knowledgeable and engaged colleagues who really view sustainability at the heart of everything we do. I'll now hand over to Ashley, who will talk about the UK's commitments.
Thank you, Lauren. In 2018, Theresa May launched the government's ambitious Road to Zero strategy. Roadmap to define how the UK would be net zero by 2050, a target recommended by the Committee on Climate Change, the UK's independent climate advisory body. It's an ambitious target, but with some indicative milestones along the way. As you can see from the slide, 2020 saw 0% benefit in kind for zero-emission vehicles. 2040 was the original date that the UK proposed a ban on sale of internal combustion engines, but there was recently a consultation which closed in July that recommended that date be possibly 2035 or maybe even 2032. We've seen Nicola Sturgeon commit Scotland to banning the sale by 2032 and to be completely net zero by 2045. And an ambitious target of 2030 for 50 to 70% of new registrations to be ultra-low emissions. Hugely ambitious targets, and we're here to help you move along that road. I'm going to hand back to Lauren now.
So we just wanted to highlight a couple of the challenges that fleets often cite to transitioning to electric vehicles. We're often asked, are EVs really green? And my answer would be yes. Electric vehicles typically produce less than 50% of the carbon compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle, and battery production is getting greener. The next slide shows the life cycle impact of different vehicles, and you can see that the predominant emissions from a car come during its life. All cars have to be manufactured and transported to the place they're going to be driven. But in life, you can see the carbon impact from the fuel used to drive the number of miles, plus the energy that's used to produce diesel and petrol from oil, transport it to the UK, deliver it in individual fuel trucks to petrol stations, and power those petrol stations for 24 hours to pump the fuel into the car. Whilst the emissions involved in producing an electric vehicle are slightly higher, if you assume that renewable energy is used to create the electricity, and increasingly in the UK it is, then in-life emissions are very low for electric vehicles. Charging is another area that people often cite as a barrier. What if everyone needs to plug in when they get in from work? Will we blow the kettle? Is there enough electricity in the UK? I don't want to have to stop for half an hour on my way to a meeting. But there are now more charging points and fuel stations in the UK, and new ones are being added all the time, particularly rapid chargers. Electric vehicles are going further, and there's a really good range of vehicles now that can comfortably do more than 200 miles on a single charge. After a few weeks of electric vehicle ownership, this charging anxiety does go away, but we know there's more to do to help people overcome this perceived barrier and really make that transition into electric.
So we've spoken about the reasons why you and your organisation should move to more environmentally friendly vehicles. And now we'll look at how we work with customers to define which stage of the sustainability journey they're on. We've defined a 5-stage process, and we refer to this as the sustainability journey. And we use this to help customers understand where they are. And some of you may already be well on the way. As an example, Lloyds Banking Group is at stage 5. It's got a clear strategy with plans and targets in place. We've got a significant penetration of electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles on the company car fleet. And the company car fleet itself has a plan for all replacements to be electric vehicles by next year. And a number of our offices have already got charging solutions in place. At the other end of the spectrum, we'll have customers who are at stage 1. They may not have even thought about the deadlines we discussed earlier. And therefore, it's our job to work with those customers to help them progress through the various stages to ensure they are ready to meet the government's Road to Zero plan. To help customers understand where they are and how they are progressing through the various stages, we've created a suite of MI to analyse the fleet as it is today and to help the customer monitor how this changes over time. We also work with the customer to understand the data for their cash takers, etc., and how their choices impact on the overall company sustainability picture. It's important to remember that it's not just the fleet vehicles that have an environmental impact for customers. We believe that employee vehicles can be covered with 3 different options that all fall under one banner. A one-stop shop covering the traditional company car for eligible employees, supported by 2 choices for the remainder of the workforce. A green salary sacrifice scheme for ultra-low emission vehicles, and an employer affinity scheme that makes use of bulk purchasing discounts. Typically, those vehicles may be non-ultra-low emission vehicles. And an employer affinity scheme that makes use of bulk purchasing discount. During our first webinar, a number of customers indicated that they were still operating fleet policies based on rental or taxable list price rules. And as we can see in this slide, the electric vehicle option has not only the highest taxable list price, but it also has the highest rental. And that's likely because manufacturers at the moment don't tend to offer discounts against electric vehicles. However, when we factor in the additional costs of operating a company car, such as employers' national insurance on the taxable benefit and fuel, we can see that the electric vehicle is actually cheaper overall for the company to provide. Not only does it make sense for the customer, but it absolutely makes sense for the employee. In these 3 examples, a 40% taxpayer could save £3,600 a year from their net pay by selecting an electric vehicle. It's the equivalent of a £6,000 a year pay rise by enabling them to have the choice of selecting an electric vehicle on the fleet versus the choice of typically selecting a diesel vehicle. And as Lauren mentioned earlier, ranges, etc., are getting longer, so some of the barriers that people previously will have perceived to not owning one of these vehicles are slowly being eroded. I'm now going to hand back over to Lauren to talk through our salary sacrifice proposition.
Thanks, Ashley. So, as Ashley mentioned, we're delighted to be relaunching our salary sacrifice proposition, which will enable more employees to access corporate discounts and get into an ultra-low emission car for a fixed price and benefit from those tax and NI savings. As a business, this is a great product to be able to offer employees and can enhance your overall reward package. It also supports your clean air objectives and sustainability goals and helps your employees to switch out of older petrol and diesel vehicles and into electric. It's tax efficient for both the business and employees, with some significant employer national insurance savings to be had. From an employee's perspective, it also allows them a way to get into an affordable green car and benefit from the tax advantages that have previously only been available for company car drivers. Your employees will be able to get a fully maintained, taxed and insured vehicle with no upfront deposit and benefit from those tax and NI savings and from fuel savings because driving an electric vehicle costs much less per mile than an equivalent diesel or petrol. If you want more information about this product, which is available today, talk to your relationship manager. So, we hope you found this useful and it's given you some ideas of how to move along the sustainability curve. I'd encourage you all to consider where your business is on the journey to net zero emissions. Do you have a plan? And what is it? Have you engaged your senior stakeholders on it? And these may be different stakeholders to those who have historically been interested in your company car fleet. For example, heads of sustainability within the organisation, colleagues within risk who may be focused on climate change risks that now need to be reported on. What support do you need from your leasing company to help you move along that journey or to help you understand through data what your fleet looks like today? And finally, how do you ensure that your grey fleet or your non-company car travel is included in any plans that you have? We will be sharing these slides after the call, and these will include some appendices, including a summary of the 2020 budget and some useful case studies. I'd also like to remind you that this webinar is part of a wider series of webinars available to support you and your business, details of which can be found in the slides or via your relationship managers. All that remains to be said is thanks for listening, stay safe, and good luck on your Road to Zero journey.
Lauren, Ashley, thank you. Everyone, thank you for listening. All the best. Take care.